Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 19th Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee meeting. This presentation is going to be recorded. It's going to be posted to the Washington County Solid Waste and Recycling webpage within 1 week. Those of you that are in the attendee pool, please hold your comments until the time allotted for on the agenda for public comment. You can use the raise the hand function. And if you've called in this evening, we will briefly unmute just to ensure you don't have any questions. Typically, we have had translation services for the last few meetings. We do not have translators in tonight's session, so I'm going to go ahead and skip this slide. So per the GRAC committee bylaws on public comment, only the committee chair may recognize a public attendee. We have a new chair, and that is Ashvin. You can use the raise the hand feature during the time on the agenda, and then we will unmute you and give you a designated time to speak. And then with that, we have a new order of process. We are going to do a roll call of all of the committee members this evening. Then I will give a chance to introduce staff that is in attendance and then any guest panelists that we have. So I'm just going to start going through, and actually while I have this up, give me just a second so I can actually see and mark everybody off at the same time here. So just unmute and say present or give me a thumbs up, and I will go ahead and record you as in attendance. We'll start with Ashvin this evening.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Ashvin Nagraja. I'm the new chair. So this is my first meeting as chair, so cut me some slack. We also have a new member today, Leslie. So I think as part of our roll call, we'd also just do a short introduction for everybody so that Leslie can get to know us. And same thing to you, Leslie. Please give us a brief introduction about yourself. So, as I said, I'm chair of the committee, first meeting, but I've been on the committee for about 3 years now. I'm a public member, and just some background on myself. I'm an engineer at Intel. I'm like an industrial engineer, and I do capacity planning. So, some like experience in equipment and layout, and also like facilities planning for all of Intel.
Great. Next, we'll move on to our vice chair, Sandra.
Hi, I'm Sandra Smith, newly appointed vice chair and unincorporated Washington County resident and public member. I work for a large financial institution in the Estate Care Center, and I am a master recycler. I've been on this committee, what, 3 years, maybe now, 3.5.
Great. And from here, I'm going to go through everybody alphabetically. So next, it's going to be you, Leslie. You could do a brief introduction here.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Leslie. As I think everyone has said, this is my first meeting. Let's see. I live in unincorporated Washington County. I decided to apply for this committee because I wanted to get a little bit more involved in public life, and I'm a native Oregonian, so recycling is near and dear to my heart, and it sounded pretty fun when I explained to people that I am on the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee, and I'm actually really excited about it. I get a lot of looks, and then I get to explain what I've learned so far. So super excited to be here. And I am in communications. I work for a pet care startup, and I have I have 2 dogs that I love very much. I also have a husband, and I also love him. Maybe in that order. So yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Leslie. Next up is Hannah.
Hi, my name is Hannah. I am a member as of, I think, October, November. So I've been on the committee for about 6 months, a public member. I live in Banks, Oregon, and so incorporated, but still a little out of the way. And I am also a Master's of Public Administration student at Portland State University, where I also serve as a program administrator for Community Environmental Services, which is a unit focused on recycling, waste reduction, and all things garbage and recycling. So I live and breathe it. And like Sandra, I'm also a master recycler.
Great, thank you. Next up is Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Christie. I'm been on the committee for a while, but my computer would not do Zoom. So I appreciate the staff getting me set up here in the office so I can be a participant. So that was great. I'm also a realtor, and I've always been interested in the county, and I'm just thrilled to be able to be here. So thank you very much.
We have Tom as our staff member.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tom Eggleston. I'm the division manager for the Solid Waste and Recycling Division and a non-voting member on the advisory committee. Thank you.
We have two members who are absent this evening. We have Maya and Pete who are both out. So next would be Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue Shade. I am a public member and I live in unincorporated Washington County.
Thanks, Sue. And last up, we have Vinod.
Hi, I'm Vinod Singh. I've been on the committee, I think 2 years, but it's pandemic years, so I'm not sure. I work for Far West Recycling. It's a processor of curbside and source segregated recyclables. We run a facility in Hillsborough, also in Portland, and then we have an electronics division in Tualatin. I've been in the business about 30 years, starting out sorting paper on the floor. I've ran facilities, and I'm the outreach manager for the company. And we have 4 dogs, so I understand the order.
Great, thanks, Vinod. My name's Erin Stein. I'm a staff member with Washington County, and I typically moderate these committee meetings. And I'll pass it to Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Folsom, and I'm a senior policy coordinator with the Solid Waste and Recycling Division. And amongst my duties, I live and breathe the GRAC. So hopefully helping to set up meetings and be a resource for the committee. So
joining us this evening, because we are talking all things rates, we have 2 representatives from Marina and Company. They're our contracted CPA firm. We have Craig Pop and Jordan Henderson. So they will be available to answer questions as we take some deep dives into rate questions later this evening. And with that, Ashwin, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, so our next item on the agenda is the solid waste and recycling program updates. If somebody from staff has a presentation to share.
Sure, I'll just do updates, just verbal updates, not a PowerPoint, but I can run through a couple things here. I also just want to recognize the attendees. Say hi. I know they're watching. Beth, Casey, and KJ. Hello. Nice to see you. You can't see us. We can't see you, but we know you're there in spirit. Other kind of a moment of order too. We are planning to do public comments on action items during the action items. So if you're interested in comments or providing feedback to the committee during the action item, please hold that for the action item itself, not necessarily the first public comment period. So some quick updates. The Board of Commissioners recently approved on the 26th of April, the Recycle Plus program proposal that your committee had reviewed and provided a recommendation on. It was called the Additional Recycling Collection Service Program, but it has been branded as Recycle Plus with the plus symbol, not the word. So there's a new webpage up on the county. There's a variety of information and materials that the education team is working on. I can run down. There's new web content, as I mentioned, up on the county's website. If you go to the garbage and recycling webpage, WashingtonCountyRecycles.com/recycle plus with the plus symbol, you will see that new page. Web content has also been shared and sent out to our franchised solid waste service providers. So they're building web pages as we go. I know Pride and Garbarino, for example, have stood up their web pages, so they're operational on those web pages. Our team is working on promotional flyers that can be used as a bill insert for companies to send information to their customers in unincorporated, a welcome letter for new customers, a guide for what kind of materials are included in the Recycle Plus program, an oops tag for tagging contamination in bags in the Recycle Plus program. The team will be out at tabling at summer events We'll have promotional information with them at those events. We're also going to be using the campaign function on our Garbage and Recycling Day application to send information to folks in unincorporated Washington County about the availability of the program. We're also planning to use that tool as a way to alert folks with reminders that they can request pickups and kind of a link directly to the page or the resource they need to go through to request a pickup from their service provider. So we're hoping it works pretty seamlessly. It's scheduled to start on the July 1st, and we'll keep you updated between now and then. Next item on my update is Metro has received some grant funds or some funds from the state to help clean up in the Portland Metro region, about $10 million. They've identified about 2.8 to 3 million that would be available to local governments through intergovernmental agreements for cleanup projects. Our county is planning to apply for some of those funds to explore concepts such as bulky waste collection vouchers. So this would be like a disposal voucher, but instead of just a voucher you would provide at the transfer station or dump, it would actually be a voucher that a community member could call their garbage caller and submit the voucher for a free bulky waste collection pickup that the county would pay for on behalf of the community member. So overcoming some of the transportation issues, we would be focusing on multifamily households and communities that are underserved, trying to make sure that those bulky waste services are available in those areas. We're also exploring some projects with our outreach partners that do outreach to houseless community to kind of explore a work development cleanup program where you have basically a cleanup crew that could be coordinated out of a nonprofit outreach agency, and then they could support folks experiencing or recently experiencing houselessness with low barrier work opportunities to support cleanups in and around homeless camps or litter pickups or illegal dump pickups around the county. We will be submitting our application on Monday, and we will find out hopefully soon if we are going to be able to pursue some of those opportunities. Next update, outreach season is getting started back up. A lot of events are coming back online this year. The team is excited to get back out into the community. They're going to be hosting a table at a variety of farmers markets and fairs and outdoor events throughout the county. So look for them out there if you're out at those events this summer. We're also preparing to gear up for the 2022 Master Recycler course here in Washington County. This Master Recycler program is going to transition to being administered by Metro. It had previously been operated by the city of Portland, and the program manager, Lauren Norris, is retiring. So this is an opportunity to kind of recalibrate that program under Metro's umbrella. The fall 2022 course will be in Washington County. Another couple quick updates on Recycling Modernization Act happenings. This is going to be a theme going on over the next couple of years. One is the Truth in Labeling Task Force. This is actually a task force that I'm serving on that is working towards a recommendation to the legislature by the end of this month, so in the next 2 weeks, regarding best practices for product labeling. It was an interesting conversation. There's a variety of members on that task force, and they're crafted a recommendation that I can share a link to some information if y'all are interested in seeing it. And it really does try to thread a needle to ensure that we can stamp out some misleading labeling practices in Oregon without running afoul of laws in California or other states that require certain recycling labels on their products or not require those labels. So it's an interesting kind of needle threading process, but I think it's a proposal that is reasonable and has some potential. The legislature would consider in the 2023 session coming up whether there's a bill that would be a bill that they would want to consider in that session. Also, there is a recycling collection list technical work group that has been meeting over the last couple months with DEQ. They're really evaluating materials and types and products that may or may not make it onto Oregon's statewide collection list. So they're kind of going through different materials and evaluating the benefits and the pros and cons of those different materials to kind of arrive at a recommendation for what should be on the statewide list. So we're following that process closely. The next meeting they have is on the 31st of this month. Those meetings are open for the public to attend if anyone is interested as well. Please reach out and let us know if you're interested. We can make sure you stay up to date on that. And there is a pretty robust website on Oregon DEQ's webpage. If you just Google Oregon DEQ Recycling Modernization Act, there's a lot of information out there. That's the last of my updates.
Thanks, Tom. Next item, committee news and calendar updates.
Thanks. So you may have noticed that the agenda's changed a little bit. Now we do, number one is introductions, and two is solid waste and recycling program updates that Tom just did. It's also an opportunity in the future if any of the committee members want to talk about something or bring up something that they may have learned. It's just a good 15 minutes where we can have a conversation about things that aren't necessarily on the agenda. And then the third item is the placeholder for committee news process and calendar updates, which I'll be doing going into the future. So the first thing is that we were going to have a presentation on Beyond the Bin tonight, the number 6 item. But as some of you may have heard, we've been dealing with widespread network issues for the last few days. And that delayed our ability to focus on GRAC and fully prepare. So we felt it would be better to reschedule it for the next meeting in June when we will be fully capable. And there's also not an action item, so we really can give some attention to a very interesting presentation. So that's my first item. And then beginning with tonight's action item, we're intending to hold a voice roll call vote. So as your name is called, each member can vote yes, no, or abstain. That'll make it a lot easier for us to capture what the vote was when we do our summaries and post to our webpage. In terms of the calendar, starting with the next meeting, I'm going to start attaching the calendar to the agenda. It'll be the second page, and it'll be a rolling 12-month calendar so that it's updated month to month, so you can look at it and see what we have scheduled. There probably will be some measure of blanks right now until we get closer, but we would just like both the public and the committee to see what the committee hears and is presented and works on. So that'll just start being the second page of the agenda. We do have, according to the bylaws, we have a training orientation meeting, one meeting a year. Right now it's scheduled for the September meeting. So far, I hope to have staff from the Washington County Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement to attend to talk to us about some of the equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts that the county has been undertaking and how that relates to our committee, and also how that relates to the community members that you all represent. I put out a plea that if someone has an issue or something they'd like to hear a presentation on, I know we're thinking about some SB 582 presentations, maybe something from DEQ, but we're always looking for ideas, and it's really what the committee would like that might help inform them as they think about the impact of some of your recommendations going forward. The next meeting, the June 9th meeting, so we'll have the Beyond the Bin presentation, and then we hope to have our education and outreach team provide an overview of some of the work projects that they are involved in. And then lastly, in terms of a calendar, Hillsborough Landfill may be able to provide a tour of the landfill later this summer if there's interest. Not for sure yet, but I'll update the committee as I find out more. It's very interesting. I've done it a couple of times. And then the very last thing is I am starting to work on a resource library so that I can put documents, post documents such as the bylaws, voting procedures, ethics around what it means to be a public official, just some of those resource documents all in the same place to try and be more supportive of the committee. And that's it for me.
So Kathy, do you think we'll discuss the calendar next meeting? and what we want to see for the rest of the year next time.
Yeah, it'll be the first time that it's attached, so it would just be part of the agenda. So during my updates, if you so chose, we could have that discussion as part of the update.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Next item is the oral communications. Aaron, if anybody signed up, keeping in mind Tom's note that if you have something related to the action item, we will have another opportunity there for public members, for attendees.
I don't see anybody don't see anybody's hand raised at this moment.
All right, well then we can go into the action item, garbage and recycling collection rate review. Aaron, if you have a presentation you want to share?
I do. Thank you for having me back. Give me just a moment to pull up my PowerPoint. And I'm going to say that I did cobble this together from what is stuck on the shared drive from my notes. I had a really stellar presentation. My expectations were high, so hopefully I don't let you all down this evening with my pieced together presentation. So thanks for having me back. I really appreciate the committee's time to go over our rate findings for the 2022 rate review and also introduce staff's proposal to move forward with the creation of a reduced rate program for our residents here in unincorporated Washington County. I'll be the primary presenter this evening, but at the end, or actually at any point, if you have questions, we do have Jordan, who assisted with the reduced rate program, and then Craig, who facilitated the actual review of the 2021 annual reports. So with both of their expertise here, we should be able to cover all of your questions this evening. So just a little bit of background. I know I was just speaking with this committee last month, but we have a new member here this evening. So our rate review is conducted each spring, and the goal of conducting annual analysis is to ensure that all of our community members are charged reasonable, fair, and just rates for essential garbage recycling collection services. We do an in-depth review of financial and programmatic data, which is supplied by all of our certificated haulers. We have 9. And it's an opportunity for the county to ensure each hauler is meeting the requirements of their certificate. The process is facilitated by a contracted CPA firm, which we have Marina with us. And they look for anomalies in the reported information. They recommend adjustments to align the reporting data with all the supporting documentation. And then they also take a look at year over year trends amongst the haulers and also industry trends. Staff summarize all these findings in a report, and then we present those to GRAC typically in May of each year. And then during this meeting, if there's any findings that staff need to bring forward as far as recommending rate changes that impact the system, we do that with the outcome of this meeting. We'll ask you for the action item at the end of this presentation. And the goal is whatever recommendation GRAC makes, we'll move that forward to the board in the month of June. I went the wrong way. Sorry about that. Back. So the county has it in its code that we can set rates, and the code specifically is 808.04.330A. And it basically states annual rate review processes ensure that any garbage and recycling collection rate changes, either increases, decreases, or holds, are just, fair, reasonable, and sufficient to provide proper service to the public while also allowing for a reasonable return on revenue for the certificated holders, or we also reference them as haulers. The model we use is a return on revenue methodology. It's a standard approach for establishing an appropriate profit margin, and a regulated solid waste collection system, because these systems don't typically require significant capital expenditures or investments. If the prior year's system's return on revenue is more or less than the target, and our target the last few years has been 10%, staff will evaluate if the system overperformed or underperformed as a whole. And then we also look at each individual line of business. So for this, we have residential, which is can cart service, commercial, which is containerized, and then drop box or compactor. And then the goal is to set uniform collection rates that are going to allow collection costs plus a profit margin. I should note also there's a variation in rates between the rural and urban communities just due to transportation cost. So I'm going to go over our findings. So the total system revenue for 2021 was $39,456,262. And that allowed a profit of around $5 million. Overall, the return on revenue came in at 12.61% for the system. So an overperformance of 2.61%. When we looked at each individual line of service, can cart came in at 12.14%, containerized waste at 13.5%, and drop box and compactor at 13.69%. And when you're looking at residential rates, can cart as any services that are 90 gallons or less. So, you know, the standard benchmark we talk about is a 32-gallon can cart customer. But so anything in a cart, 90 gallons or less. When we're talking about commercial, we're looking at 1 yard containers or larger, and then drop box and compactors, they are typically 10 yards and larger. So when we look at the over earning in the residential sector, it really gives us an opportunity to talk about something that I discussed with this committee back in April 14th, which is introduction of a reduced rate program. When I talk about the dollar amount of revenue that each line of service over earned, residential revenue is came in an excess of $632,000. Commercial came in at $287,000 over, and Dropbox at $225,000. So the whole point of the return on revenue is figuring out what percent of decrease or increase will return the system back to 10%. And the way this worked itself out to get all line items down to 10% in a standard rate review season, we would recommend all 3 lines of business get a decrease. The residential being 2.4% decrease, a commercial decrease of 3.9%, and a drop box decrease of 4.1%. So some key considerations when we're talking about whether rates should be changed. We have the precedent of returning to a 10% ROR, but a lot of factors that yourself and the board will also consider when adjusting rates is system impacts, foreseen or unforeseen. For example, we just are coming out of a pandemic. Methods used for collection and transportation, how are wages doing? What lines of service are we offering all of our members in unincorporated? Washington County, programmatic changes, and of course, investments into facilities equipment and other things that might impact haulers, such as return on revenue. A big focus, we worked with this committee to update our administrative rules over the last year with a real equity lens focus. And we're trying to carry this through all of the work that solid waste and recycling does. And this really has been highlighted in a low income rate study that staff have been working on for the last 6 to 8 months. So the county has the responsibility to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of all of its community members. And many community members struggle to maintain steady access to essential services, and this includes garbage and recycling collection. The 2030 Metro Regional Waste Plan highlighted community members' voices around this issue and prioritized a region-wide implementation of a low-income assistance program. Staff are confident that moving forward with the reduced rate program approval during this rate review cycle is a natural next step to a successful project launch. We estimate that approximately 20% of the households within unincorporated Washington County earn a wage at or below 185% of poverty level. That's about $49,000 a year for a family of 4. With this understanding, staff recommend the county establishes an approach that increases accessibility and affordability of essential collection services to all community members in our certificated area. And we can achieve that by implementing a reduced rate program. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we would start a net zero program. So as mentioned, we concluded that about 20% of the 66,000 community members in unincorporated Washington County could be eligible for this reduced rate program. But based on analysis we conducted, looking at similar programs nationwide and regionally, we actually project that about 15% of those eligible will actually participate in the program. So when you think of that in terms of number of applicants, it's about 2,000 households that we would think out of the 66,000 that would enroll in the program and participate. Our current collection rate system is a closed loop system, meaning assessments of all costs and revenues are considered annually during the rate review process. And the staff are proposing that an integrated approach be taken to launch the reduced rate program. Offering a reduced rate over an extended period of time offers the lowest administrative overhead. It allows for continual monitoring, and it offers the flexibility to be adjusted annually during that rate review process. Analysis determined that the volume of eligible customers is pretty proportionately distributed amongst the different haulers service areas, and therefore staff proposed the annual rate review process be used to reset the base service rate needed to fund the program in an upcoming rate cycle. For example, the system brought in $3.95 million in revenue in 2021. Program implementation would require a counterbalance in the rates of approximately $600,000 annually to reach a net zero cost impact. So what does that mean? The standard rate payer, currently the base rate is set at $27.98 a month. We're recommending that rate stays as is, and then a program participant, once accepted to the program, would pay $7 a month for their 32-gallon can cart service. And I'm seeing a typo here about what their annual savings is going to be. So sorry about that. So it's a closed loop system here. You have the standard rate payer paying in, the program participant pays in, that everyone pays the hauler directly. The hauler pays the county franchise fees each year, The county pays a community partner to administer the program. That program partner reports back to the hauler on once we determine on a regular basis who's eligible for the program. And then that program participant gets that fixed rate for a specified amount of time. At the end of the year, when we complete the rate review analysis, we can make adjustments. And I'm going to move on to the next slide. So as I discussed, eligibility parameters include income at 185% of federal poverty level, so around $49,000 a year. And then you're going to get a discount of 75%, and that's about 2,000 community members. With the reduced rate, we would anticipate that the standard rate payer would contribute about 70 cents per month, or about $8.37 annually, to subsidize the discount from the participants who would pay $7 a month, and they save about $251 annually. So we see an opportunity in this rate review cycle to implement this program just based on the amount of revenue. Currently, if we offered a rate reduction of 2.14%, that would reduce the revenue by $632,000. And the peak participation revenue that we anticipated needing for the program is $609,000. So with all the consideration that we've placed in developing a program that's simple to apply for and meets candidates where they're at, we really want to leverage strong partnerships between the haulers, the county, and community action groups to ensure this program reaches our most vulnerable and really help those needing support maintain essential services. We're recommending basically a swap. So instead of reducing rates, we're recommending that amount of revenue stays in the system, subsidizing in advance a reduced rate program. So we do have my staff recommendations this evening. For the 2022 rate review cycle, staff is recommending that we decrease rates for commercial and Dropbox customers. The rate decrease for commercial customers would be 3.9%. The decrease for Dropbox customers would be 4.1%. We would recommend that these new rates take effect on August 1st of 2022 upon approval by the Washington County Board of County Commissioners. Additionally, staff recommend a reduced rate program be implemented on January 1st of 2023 in lieu of a residential can cart decrease. The revenue surplus of the $632 million in residential can cart line of service offsets the estimated revenue reduction from a reduced rate program. Staff recommend a 75% discount be applied to the standard residential can cart collection service rates and the recycling surcharge for all households with income at or below 185% of the federal poverty level. So my apologies that was kind of cobbled together, but if you have any questions, we are here and happy to answer them.
Go ahead and open it for questions. Nothing to apologize for there, Aaron. Great presentation.
I did have a question, and so did Sandra. We both had our hands up.
Yeah, go ahead, Bernard.
So I appreciate that you put that reduced rate in there. I was kind of curious as how you were going to front feed that. I'm curious about how much forward looking is put into the rate, or is it all historic data? So, you know, inflation's going up, fuel costs are high, we know wages will probably go up. Is that, you guys factor all that in? Is that part of the equation?
No, our model is always looking at the full year behind. We did, you were probably part of the process last year with the exponentially great Metro tip fee. We did do a little projection, but then as you've seen, the system overperformed. And there were a variety of factors, but that very large increase that was given last July definitely cushioned the revenue flow a bit. So generally we abstain from any projections and just look at the past and then true up for the following year.
And is there another metro rate coming up this year?
I
don't know,
saw
Tom, you're in the lab.
projections. I saw projections, but nothing has passed yet.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was my question, is how much do we look at what, economic indicators are pointing towards? So
Other jurisdictions do adopt that, but all of ours is a pass look and then true up for the next cycle.
Yeah, we use actuals from the year prior in our review. So it goes both ways. When it's maybe going that way, it goes that way. When it's maybe going this way, it goes that way as well. So it's an approach that we use because we've had it's a difficult, futures and projections are the most challenging things to agree on in a kind of a rate review process, I think, and it's all based on a variety of factors and opinions and facts. So it's a tough proposition. Our return on revenue target is a little bit higher than many other jurisdictions, in part because we acknowledge that we're not doing projections and futures. So that is kind of one of the trade-offs that we've made with the Haulers Association on that.
Yeah, I wish I knew the future. I should be a different person. Thank you.
I probably wouldn't have this job if I could predict gas futures too. But.
Thank you for your work on this.
Go ahead, Sandra. Question.
Yeah, I read this all over before the meeting. I had a few questions, and I still do. So this profit overage that you showed was, and that's for the previous year.
Yes.
I mean, when you add up the commercial and the residential, that's like $1 million. So, this is I think this is the first time since I've been on this committee that this has ever been a profit or ever been a situation like this. Usually we're in the hole or about break even. So I'm wondering where that money is housed, or so do the haulers all make a profit and then they have to give you the overage? I'm not sure where all this money is right now.
It's hypothetical money. So we saw what they earned, and then Marina does a calculation for us to say, if this is the revenue that they over earned, this is the percent of rate decrease you need for each business sector to return that back. Of course, there's many other factors that feed into this, as we alluded to, gas futures, but also things go the other way where recyclables made a profit. So where in 2020 recyclables, everyone was paying for recyclables, there were actually months in 2021 that haulers made a slim margin on recyclables. So there's so many variable factors in the system, but it's a hypothetical dollar amount, just going on history, saying if we decrease it just this much for each customer, it should level the system back to 10% and prevent the over earning.
But it is true though, Sandra, that last year, so in 2021, they earned $1 million over that target. And that money doesn't come back out of the system. They just over earned. In the years they under earned, they don't get paid back for what's missing between 10% and say 8% as well. So it goes, it goes up and it goes down, and it dances on that target line, and that's kind of the approach. And over time, it should be close to that 10% line.
It's not like a fund that are available now type of thing.
Nope.
So the earliest we would implement this low income thing would be next year. We wouldn't try to start it earlier, since we have this virtual profit or whatever we have here.
So it would be lovely if we could, but there's going to be quite a bit of other legwork we have to do as far as setting up contracts with our community partners and actually developing an application process, working with the haulers to make sure everybody's rate system, their operating systems are compatible to get the new rates loaded as well. So I think while I would love to just say today, let's do it, it's such an amazing thing to do, there's quite a bit of legwork we have to complete before we can actually launch the program.
Okay. So this 609,000 estimated cost, that's at peak level, right? Not because beginning when we start this, it's going to be a lot less.
That was our projected. We did a 4-year projection, and we were thinking at peak that was where we'd be about the 2,000 households.
Okay. So if a household has this was based on a 75% reduction on a 32-gallon can. If they have a smaller can or a larger can, would it be the same percentage?
Yeah, we'll go all the way up to the 90-gallon can size, and they'll still get the 75% off. Hopefully that will help multi-generational households right size their garbage service and prevent contamination. If they have maybe been paying for a smaller bin because that's what fit their budget versus maybe a larger cart that better fits their needs.
And I can't remember if the last month it was just urban that we were only offering this to urban residents.
No, open to anybody in
Okay.
unincorporated, but it is limited
Right.
just to our service areas. So the
Okay.
unincorporated areas, yes.
Good. I couldn't remember that.
We had done a pilot that did cover the entire county with some CARES Act funding, but this would just be specifically tied to our operating system, so we can manage it through the rate review.
Okay.
And we're working, I sit on a committee of regional partners, so many jurisdictions are looking at what we're doing as a model. They really like the research that we've put into this. So, and it does make sense to have it kind of tied in. So it'll be really interesting to see if this moves forward. Hopefully our other jurisdictional partners will model it and keep it consistent for the haulers who are participating as well. We really tried to find something that was very turnkey and simple for everybody involved. So it wasn't administratively heavy, really just cut out, paperwork backlogs or needing to hire someone on county staff or allocate a good percentage of my time. We'll actually partner with a community action group to administrate this. And right now the quote we have is about $15 to $20 per application. So very small annual fees to actually do this work.
I think that's everything I have.
All right, Sue, can I ask your questions?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. And this is money in the pocket is confusing to me as well. So I want to make sure that I understand that moving forward, basically with the rate adjustment August 1, we will, is it true? Let me ask this question first. Is it true, yes, that rate increase will reflect the reduced rate program? Is that correct?
Yes, so what we're proposing is that commercial gets a rate decrease of 3.9%.
Right.
And Dropbox gets 4.1% decrease. But instead of a 2.4% decrease, which is about 62 cents a month for the average customer, we are recommending we do not do a residential decrease because the amount of revenue that should earn will cover the cost of implementing the reduced rate program. So instead of offering, so that's where the swap is taking place, where let's say the system just earned at 10%, just hypothetically. then the ratepayers would not have a rate change at all, would be a standard recommendation, because the system netted, zero. But if we wanted to implement the reduced rate program, we would be coming to this committee saying, we really have this great program. We need a way to pay for it. Can we give the system an increase in rates to help cover the cost to implement this program? So because the system over-earned, we thought this was a really good opportunity to just say, leave the rates where they're at. We're expecting this influx of revenue into the system over the next year, and then that will offset the cost of us implementing this.
And so it seems like we're taking the position that only residential groups should be paying for this reduced rate program, and no commercial or Dropbox services, initially at least, will be contributing to the reduced rate program. That's correct?
That's correct.
And how will we monitor or track the revenue that's going into that program? That bucket of money that's supposed to be for that program, who is going to be managing that and tracking it?
So the way we have it set up, the money doesn't actually go anywhere. It just stays. So January 1st of 2023, a standard rate payer keeps paying their same rate, and applicants then begin receiving that discounted rate. In 2024, when we conduct the rate review, we'll have a full year picture of how many participants participated and the amount of revenue that part of the system was short, for lack of a better term. So then we would know if we had 1,500 participants, $500,000, and we have to look at the other factors also happening in the system, but that would play into the amount of rate increase or decrease we would request then in that rate review cycle to level the system back to the 10% return on revenue.
Okay, so it will always go back to the rate review to adjust the system and find out how many participants, exactly what you said. So that's going to be our check and balance system.
Yes.
For a better term.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we don't have to have anybody pay into a fund that then needs to be distributed amongst the 9 haulers, depending on the number of participants. It would get very administratively heavy. So we really wanted something that was streamlined. And when we did our analysis on how the different hauler areas would be impacted, it was a less than 1% difference between each hauler on the percent to number of customers that they have that would be eligible for this program. So no one hauler was really disproportionately impacted by having a large number of low-income community members. It's pretty evenly spread out amongst all the haulers in unincorporated Washington County. So we felt this would be a pretty good way to move forward by just leaving it in the system and then truing it up every year.
Right.
Another way, Sue, another way to kind of think about it is we used to have a rate for an extra yard debris cart that was like $1.50 a month. And that was a rate that was set artificially low on purpose at one point in time. And that didn't pay for the cost to deliver an extra yard debris cart. But the rest of the residential rates subsidized that fee. So this is essentially the same thing. It's those reduced, the participants paying the reduced rate are not paying their full cost of service. The rest of the ratepayers are paying a little bit more than their full cost of service to offset that for the reduced ratepayer. So it's all washing out, but it stays within that line of service. It does not take revenue from commercial or revenue from Dropbox. It all stays in the residential line. And we evaluate based on each line of service so we can make sure the revenue and the expenses are not washing over to the other lines.
Right. Okay. Great. Okay, so that answers my first question. Now I have a second question and or comment perhaps, and that concerns the recycling surcharge that has been in place since April of 2018. I want to know when we are going to figure that out and roll it into the rate instead of having this extra surcharge. I just think that we need to make a change and you know, have it part of the base rate. That's my opinion. Do you guys have a comment on that?
I can take that. So we're not proposing that this time, as you've noticed and see. And part of that is there's really two main factors for it. One is we're still paying for recycling, so it's not necessarily generating revenue. There was, Aaron mentioned a moment in time where it came up and then it went back down, but we're still paying for recycling. So it's still an expense on the system. And two, we are optimistically watching the Recycling Modernization Act, and the Recycling Modernization Act has a element that is considered basically a processing fee rebate system. That's a bad word for it. Maybe Vinod can help me talk about what this is basically. But in theory, this fee is supposed to help offset the cost for haulers, for our ratepayers to dump recycling or to take recycling to a MRF. So the goal is to have a net neutral cost so that the cost of taking recycling to the MRF after the Recycling Modernization Act is in place is net zero or even revenue positive, like it was before the National Sword. And that fund would be funded by producers in the producer responsibility organizations when they're implemented in the Recycling Modernization Act. And Vinod, I think you could probably speak to it much better.
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking about how sticky this is going to be when 582 kicks in, how much modeling it's going to take. So yeah, it's essentially a rate stabilization fee. So they're going to take the average value of what's in the mix, and then if it's a cost, they'll use producer money to pay that down. So we don't have these big swings like we've had when the market's cratered. I would add that, you know, we're talking about there was an overage this year. I don't know, Tom, what the percentage under was when it was going down, but we went from paying to charging rather quickly when the markets went away. So those years they were underperforming, and there was no money that went back to them. They got the money back the next year or got righted to 10%. So there's a number of pieces to 582, contamination fee that'll be paid by the producers, and that's on wish cycled materials. It doesn't cover bowling balls and garden hoses and diapers and wood and everything else that we get in there. So that'll help offset some of that packaging misrecycling. And then it'll also offset some improvements to living wages, or whatever you want to call it, across the system. So they're going to be putting some money into the recycling. It's not going to necessarily pay for all of it. It'll still be a charge. It'll be just sort of flattened out, if that makes sense. Does that help, or did I make it worse?
It
A
helps.
little of both.
There's a lot of moving pieces. We actually have the meeting on the 1st to kind of go over, it's also going to fund education for local government. So there's money that's going to be kind of spread out like, syrup on a waffle. So they're going to try to fill all the holes in there to make it a more, a flat system, so to speak.
So I guess, Sue, if we bake the $2 into the rate, but there are conditions coming down the pathway that could make somebody else pay that $2 besides the ratepayers, that's why I think we're recommending it stay separate for another year and just let's see what comes.
Yeah, that's a very simple way of saying it.
But
It's not going to be a complete wash, but maybe 50% of it, or maybe 75 cents of it, or maybe $1 of it, but we don't know what it's going to be.
But the expectation is that an answer then is going to come to us in the next year.
Not next year.
Not
I think
next year.
2025 is when the next couple of years, there's a lot of planning going on around it. And so there's, like Tom mentioned, there's the truth in labeling, there's the material list, There's some rural advisory committees that are being formed. The Recycling Council met for the first time last week. So there's lots of pieces, and the producers have to get their information and how they're going to pay into the program, and how they're going to be structured, how the producer responsibility organization works with the individual producers.
And what are other jurisdictions doing? You know, have they rolled a surcharge into their billing? Is it in their base rate? You know, what?
Most of them have rolled it in.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
All right, Leslie, you want to ask your questions?
Okay, I would like to caveat this with that I've A, been trying to remember my question, and B, I apologize if this was something extremely clear, but I'm trying to take it all in. I guess my first question is like, what's the, well, there's the two-part question, it's one question. What accounts for the, like when I look at the commercial versus residential and I see that it's like a decrease in their rate, and I might be using all the wrong words, and then I see that ours are staying the same, what is like the simplest way to explain what's accounting for that? Because I'm going like reactive, like PR brain, and I'm thinking if somebody sees that and they see, okay, businesses aren't paying extra or staying the same, but we are staying the same, why is that? So I'm trying to wrap my mind around like what is the simplest way to understand why it looks like the businesses are decreasing, but our rate would stay the same as like a homeowner. That's kind of, I combined them into one, essentially.
So in a standard year, Leslie, we would be sitting here recommending that residential gets a decrease. We would say it over-earned. It requires a decrease of 2.4%. It's going to save everybody about 60 cents a month. And that should level set the revenue and take about 632,000 out of the system. But we really are excited about the opportunity to introduce this reduced rate program. And that dollar amount pretty much mirrors what we think peak participation in a reduced rate program looks like for the county. So we're recommending don't decrease the rates, leave them where they are, and that revenue fund this reduced rate program. So a swap in essence. So you're right, we would be absolutely saying the system, a standard process for us is to reduce that to a 10% ROR. And that would give everybody a reduced rate on all lines of service this year.
But I think another way to say it is, instead of saving 60 cents a month, you're buying 2,000 of your low income neighbors opportunity to get their garbage picked up for $7 a month.
Okay, that is what I was thinking it would mean. So I'm glad that I got this far. And I really like this idea. My concern, well, my question, I guess, would be then my follow-up is it going to be like external facing that commercial is maintaining their decrease? Because I could see somebody kind of feeling like commercial, why is a resident offsetting the cost instead of a business, and having that be a question.
Yeah, so when we actually look at the financials each year, you know, I gave you a composite number that the entire system overperformed and was at 12.61%. But we always look at each 3 lines of business independently. We don't tie them together.
Okay.
So it's standard. Last year, Dropbox received a decrease, and commercial and residential both saw rate increases. And commercial, if I remember correctly, would not have typically received. They would have sat flat last year, but we projected for a pretty substantial metro, a 17% metro tip fee increase that really affects our disposal cost. And then residential did underperform. So they were already last year needing a rate increase. And that was just amplified due to the metro tip fees. So there is a, as Tom was, he was like, it's kind of wavy, it kind of up and down a little bit each year. We really make the users of that sector of the system pay for that. We want to keep it self-contained. That way we don't have residential customers subsidizing the commercial line of service either. We have a lot more money flowing through the residential sector than the commercial and Dropbox. And we really just keep those independent of each other. And for the record, it's all public record. So everything gets posted and shared. It will go to the board. Any recommendations that this committee and staff carry forward will be out. They'll be published on our website. And then anybody who has a rate impact also will get a letter mailed out to them through their hauler.
Okay, cool. I just know there's a lot of sensitivity around businesses, you know, in societal level, businesses maybe creating problems and not as equitably helping solve them. And that totally makes sense to me. And I know that even if something's public record doesn't mean somebody necessarily is going to go look up and find the answer.
No.
So thank you for explaining that.
Another thing that's important about our system, Leslie, is that I think Aaron kind of mentioned it. Something like 2/3 of the revenue that flows through our system. So we measure our system by revenue. So it's $40 million basically. 2/3 of that $40 million is residential ratepayers. So we're mostly a community in unincorporated of households and you know, homes and less of business districts and big business community. And so when it's that disproportionate, it's a lot easier for small amounts of revenue to seep from the residential sector into the business sector if one is offsetting the cost of another. Because if you saw the residential sector overperformed by 2% this year and it was $600,000, the commercial sector overperformed by 3.5% and it was $200,000. So it's a much more revenue moving through the residential sector. And so it's a larger economy of scale almost in a sense. And so smaller adjustments result in bigger amounts of money moving around. So it's more natural in that type of a system for the residents actually to be implementing a subsidy for a commercial ratepayer. And we really do try to keep it separate. So commercial ratepayers are paying commercial rates and residential ratepayers are paying residential rates.
I'll jump in with my questions. I was curious about like the rate starts August 1st this year versus July 1st last year. Does it affect how the amounts are calculated for like the year on year? Like, is it like, so when you do it for this year versus next year, do you do July to July or August to August, or do you just account for the fact that it was different for 1 month?
So we have historically implemented on July 1st, but due to overwhelming community feedback and feedback from the board, we are pushing the implementation date. We're recommending it go to August 1st. That will allow the board to approve any rate changes in June, advance letters to go out on July 1st and provide the commercials that are having rate impacts. All the commercial and Dropbox customers that are going to have rate impacts, they will get all of those 30 days in advance before the new rates are implemented. Marina can do a calculation for us to adjust the revenue. This was done on a 12-month look, not an 11-month look. We will be moving forward. It would be August to August. So this year is a one-off where it's just going to be 11 months accounted for. Actually, no, opposite, sorry, 13, because they're getting that extra month of revenue. 11 months to next year, and then it goes into the 12-month rolling again next year, next August.
Okay.
And I will allow Marina to jump in if I flubbed that explanation up.
Do a good job of simplifying things there. I think it's very clear. The other question is, in like the rate comparison between like gallon carts between Washington County versus other counties. It seems like other counties have like a larger disparity between the 20 gallon and the 32, 35. I was curious if we intentionally made ours closer, and if part of the solve for the rates is like the number of people per gallon cart, because if you could, preferentially change how much you charge that cart, if more people have a 35-gallon cart, for instance, which would then reduce the cost for the 20-gallon cart. And I'm just curious if that was unintentional, just because it's, not every county is about $5, but if you're just looking at it, glancing at it, most of them are around $5, and a few are, 2 to 3 like us. And I know there's differences, like they do weekly also, so it's, their prices are different, but I'm just curious if that was intentional, and if that's part of the solve for rates to adjust that.
So I'm going to
So
try
it
to
is somewhat intentional, and it's intentional in the way that, at least for the larger bins, like the 60 and the 90s in particular, there is you pay more per gallon for the service in a sense. And it's hard to explain. Kathy, can you help explain it? It's essentially making it so that the cost of disposal is the piece that changes when you're going to a larger bin. So instead of disposing of 32 gallons, you're disposing of 96 gallons. So the cost differential for that disposal is less than going from $27 to $46. So we're actually disincentivizing a 96-gallon can in our rate structure, and we're incentivizing people to recycle more and use a smaller can in our rate structure. If you look at like Tigard, for example, just last year, I think, or the year before, Tigard kind of removed those economic incentives out of their rate structure, and you'll see that the difference between them is pretty, it doesn't jump between those different sizes as much. And I think you pointed out something good, Ashman, that 20 in our system may be a little bit higher than the 20 in like some other systems, and our 32 is a little bit lower, but I don't know if I can explain that away. Kathy, do you have anything?
No, you captured, you can have rate setting that's just strictly across the board cost of service based on the numbers of participants at each size of receptacle, and just doing the math. And then you can also have a more behavioral approach where you want to incentivize or disincentivize sort of the generation of larger volumes of garbage. And we are kind of in the middle in some, when you look at other jurisdictions, which I haven't looked at in a while, but based on what you said, Tom. So you captured that. I mean, it really is the disposal difference a little bit otherwise, but that's the biggest component.
So it's kind of like water users that pay more when they start using over 1,000 gallons a month or something per gallon. Kind of, it's like an economic disincentive in a sense. Recognizing
it's a finite resource for water is, and in garbage, we have all these messages about reducing your waste. So
yeah, well, I know it can be kind of hard to do like the incentivization to get what you want, but in terms of just like maximizing or minimizing the cost reductions, you could potentially play around with that. It's just, we were saying that's not done. You're just doing it across the board.
Yeah, they were set at one time, the difference between them, like say if it's a % difference, and then we're just holding it constant and we're lowering it all up and down together. We don't play with each container size in each rate review. You could potentially do a study, you could reset it, you could take a different policy approach and reset it in one rate year and then carry that forward, but we haven't done that in any recent future at all. Recent past.
Recent past. And then my last question was around the reduced rate. I think I talked to you guys about this on Monday. I still don't think I completely understand though. Like when this goes to the board, right, they have to approve the reduced rate program as well as the new rate increase. Are they aware of the reduced rate program already? And do we expect them to, be on board? And if they don't, right, is that money going to go back to the residents instead of keeping the rate the same?
Commissioners have received a policy brief on the reduced rate program and been offered one-on-one meetings with staff. We haven't had any. We are going to a work session on this coming Tuesday, the 24th of May, to present just the reduced rate program, similar to what we did with your committee in April. And we're going to ask the board at that meeting if they would like us to return to the June 14th board meeting to propose the whole package like we're doing here today. So if they decide that they don't like the reduced rate program, our fallback recommendation would be a rate decrease.
Okay. And does that need to be written in the staff recommendation today, or is that just going to be follow on based off of the next meeting on their recommendation?
Yeah, not necessarily. If your committee recommends that the board goes forward with it tonight, we would carry that recommendation forward, and we would inform them even next Tuesday that the advisory committee has heard about it and recommends it being included as well.
Okay. Thanks. Sue, go ahead. And other committee members, if you have a question, I don't know if you want to raise your hand in Zoom or I'm calling based off of people's hands raised via Zoom.
So this is just a clarifying question on attachment A, where we're reflecting the 2022 rates for commercial container and Dropbox services. I want to know if the rates reflected in the table include the 4% monthly surcharge, which is, it indicates it does. So does that mean that the actual rate in the table is what the hauler should charge? Because I have many haulers that break out that 4% surcharge. So I don't want to get charged twice.
So Sue, you should be billed separately. So you're either 4% on a containerized or $2 on your canned cart.
Right.
To keep it easy and rolled into one document, we roll it all in for a year-over-year comparison. So that's why it is. The actual rate sheets will reflect your base rate and then have the note that the 4% is added separate. So there will be a difference in the actual attachment A rates that go to the board for approval versus the comparison charts that I've provided.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from committee members? We also go to the attendee pool, but it does not look like anybody has their hand raised for comment.
There it goes.
Give me just a second and I can give Beth permission to talk here. Hi, Beth.
Hi. So since I was invited, I had to raise my hand, but is this the time to provide comment on this, or should I? Okay, didn't know if you wanted me now or later. All right, well then, you all know me. Good evening, chair and vice chair now, members of the commission. I'm Beth Vargas Duncan. I'm the regional director for Oregon Refuse and Recycling Association, and in that capacity, I represent the Washington County Haulers Association. We call them WCHA, whose members provide the solid waste and recycling collection services for Washington County. Every Washington County hauler providing garbage and recycling collection service is a member of the Washington County Haulers Association, all of the certificated members. The majority of WCHA members are family companies, which is a point of pride in our industry. WCHA members are committed to their service to the people of Washington County and to meeting rigorous standards for health and safety. This commitment has been seen and felt during the ice storms, the wildfire smoke, and service never has halted through COVID, unlike has happened in other services and other states. We've also been committed to our partnership with the county and this committee. Together, we've built an efficient and progressive franchise waste collection program that assures every resident in the county has access to the same service no matter where they live. in unincorporated Washington County. Several Washington County Haulers Association members are expanding diversity, equity, and inclusion activities in their workforce and vendor networks. WCHA's work reflects shared values with the communities we serve, including equity and environmental protections and providing quality service to all residents at a reasonable cost. This brings me to the topic for us tonight, rate review. As you know, Washington County haulers are highly regulated by the county, and each year we engage in a robust rate review process, which we support and is important for the integrity of the franchise certificated system. And so the people of Washington County also know they're getting a service at a rate that is fair. And through this process, Washington County haulers work cooperatively with the county, providing highly detailed financial information. The county's rate consultant reviewed the financial information and rates to determine the cost of service. And the haulers in the county collectively discussed the calculations, ensuring accuracy for both the haulers and the ratepayers. You heard all about this very well through Aaron's presentation tonight. The Washington County haulers believe the rate review and setting process is fair, with the right balance of independent review and transparency to assure reasonable rates for the haulers and to the Washington County customers that we serve. We support the rate adjustments and we support the reduced rate program as presented tonight by staff. In conclusion, regardless of the challenges confronting us, whether it's COVID, the smoke-filled fires, the Washington County haulers members have consistently worked in collaboration with the county and stakeholders to efficiently and effectively address challenges with sustainable results. We ask tonight that the GRAC recommend to the Washington County Board of Commissioners to adopt the rates as presented and the reduced rate program that Washington County staff presented tonight. We look forward to partnering with you all further into the future, and we appreciate the opportunity to serve Washington County. I'm also available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Any other questions or comments from the committee?
I'll just say good thing we didn't try to put in the presentation as well, because it's already 7:30. So that was a good move.
That's good. Well, if we're all concluded with comments, then I would need a motion to approve staff recommendations that we can vote on it as a committee.
I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendations as presented.
I second.
Great. We can go into a vote. I think, Aaron, were you going to do a roll call vote?
I will. Do I need to reread what the staff recommendation is, or we are good? Shall I reread it? For point of clarification, I will reread it. Staff recommends that the following adjustments shown in attachment A become effective on August 1st of 2022 upon approval by the Washington County Board of Commissioners. A 3.9% rate decrease for commercial service, a 4.1% rate decrease for drop box and occasional container service. Additionally, staff recommends a reduced rate program be implemented on January 1st of 2023 in lieu of a residential rate decrease. The revenue surplus of $632,000 in the residential can cart line of service will offset the estimated reduction needed to implement a reduced rate program. The program will offer a 75% discount applied to standard residential collection services and the recycling surcharge for households within unincorporated Washington County at or below 185% of the federal poverty level. And with that, I will take a roll call. We'll start with Ashton.
I'll vote yes.
Sandra.
I mean, yes, but I also would like that, like Ashton had mentioned, to include, in case the board doesn't approve that we would default to the residential rate decrease. Just put that in as a caveat or something like that.
Okay, I have a little note section in my new roll call.
We have to, is that amending the motion?
Oh,
So let's, Kathy, Robert, our parliamentarian here, Kathy Folsom, can help us. I think we would, we have to dispose of the motion on the table.
You
So
need,
I don't think.
it's okay, it's okay.
you
We should
need
figure
to
this out.
discuss, you need to have discussion if any, if not, have a second on the amendment and then vote on the amendment and then go back and vote on the motion as amended
There you go.
with the original.
Yeah, so Sandra, you could say you move to amend the motion to include what you just asked, and then we could vote on that, and then we can go back and vote on the bigger motion.
Is it motion and then discussion? Is that?
You need to call for if there's any discussion on the amendment after the second.
Okay.
She could,
So Sandra, you could move to amend it like you said, and then if there's a second, then we would talk about it.
So I move to amend our motion to include that if the board doesn't approve the rate reduction program to, the low income, I don't even have this written down, low income program to default to the residential rate increase as a, I don't know, did I say that
That's
right?
good, that's good. We just need a second.
Seconded.
Okay. Any discussion? Yeah, go ahead, Ashwin.
I'm gonna say, yeah, any discussion on the topic?
I don't see that it would be a problem, but just in case, you never know.
I like it.
Okay, so I'm starting at the top again with a new roll call. So I'm going to take roll call, and this is on the approved, the newly amended approval, which
This
will
is just on the
include-
amendment.
you have to vote on the amendment and then you can go back and vote on the motion as amended.
So I move to vote on the amendment as Sandra stated.
Roll call it, Aaron.
Okay. Ashvin,
Yes.
Sandra,
Yes.
sorry, it's Sandra, isn't it? I keep saying it wrong. Leslie,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes,
Sue,
Yes.
and that concludes the voting members, correct?
Yes,
Vinod's a voting member.
Okay. Okay. And now we're going to do it again
As amended.
as amended.
Just as a point of clarification, Ashwin can ask if there's any discussion on the motion as amended, and then you can call roll call.
Is there any discussion on the amended? No?
Okay.
Roll call.
Ashvin,
Yes.
Sandra,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
Kathy,
yes,
Sue,
Yes.
Vinod.
yes, thank you.
Sorry, Vinod.
We're getting so formal.
It is.
I like it. It's,
Parliamentary procedure.
so it looks like it passes.
Unanimous. Thanks, everybody.
Unanimously. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for your time this evening. This is a very in-depth process, and it always feels good when we get to this benchmark in the road. So I really look forward to taking your recommendations to the board next month. Thank you all.
So I guess the last item is oral communication from the attendees, which doesn't look like anyone signed up. I don't believe we need a motion to adjourn, so it's just, we are adjourned. So thank you, everybody.
Cool. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Have a good rest of your week.
Thank you for attending the May 19th Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee meeting. As mentioned, this session was recorded and will be posted to our website within 1 week. Thank you.